Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Abby, and today we're going to talk about something a little bit different. I just finished shooting the weekly chakra healer video, and because I just did that, I'm just going to go ahead and put the cards back while I talk to you guys about something that I kind of been wanting to talk about for a while now, just because I thought these two things were, I thought the story was kind of a little bit interesting. And this has to do with the whole R. Kelly and Romeo Lacoste situation. And some people are going to know who Romeo Lacoste is. I know he's definitely very popular on YouTube. I personally didn't know about him until he popped up in my recently in like my recommendations while on YouTube watching videos and stuff like that. And I kind of thought it was kind of interesting how, like, the stories and how they're kind of a little bit similar, even though R. Kelly is obviously way more popular than Romeo Lacoste is and had way more influence on the women that he has affected in this lifetime. But I wanted to talk about a little bit of the astrology in relation to Capricorn sexuality, not in the same because I'm not trying to bash all Capricorns for their sexuality or anything like that. We are known to be like the earth sign of the Scorpios as well, so there is a darker aspect to how we I don't want to use the word love, but how we sexualize, I guess. And I wanted to talk about this, especially as a Capricorn, and a January Capricorn, because both these motherfuckers are January Capricorns, which I was mad about. And to top it off, R. Kelly was born on my birthday, so I share a birthday with this guy. So I wanted to talk about this in the context of the Capricorn sexuality and how kind of dark it goes, and how there is a neglect of time that kind of gets used with Capricorns. And I just thought that it was an interesting contrast, because if you look at R. Kelly, he's like, I believe he's in his 50s, if I'm not mistaken. So R. Kelly happens to be way older, and he's part of a different generation. However, Romeo Lacoste is 30 years old, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't read incorrectly. And he is part of my generation, because I am 29. So he has pretty much the same generational planets that I do. So their charts are very interesting, even though I did look up both of their charts, and even though they don't have the same kind of like placements, obviously there are certain themes that I kind of noticed from their charts that I thought was kind of interesting. And I'm not going to completely dive into their charts or anything like that, but I did want to talk about a couple of things that I noticed that they kind of did, especially because they both did kind of two very public interviews, both that people now see as a very stupid thing to do as far as social status and career, which is dun dun dun, what Capricorns rule in astrology as far as the 10th house goes. So there is something about a collective presence with Capricorns. It's something that we impact and rule. That's a part of how you show up in the world. So when it comes to R. Kelly, for example, or actually no, when it comes to both of them, it can easily be understood why they've had a social impact the way they have, because Capricorns rule that social status. But the way they did their interviews were kind of ridiculous, because with the R. Kelly's famous interview with I cannot remember her name. I cannot remember her name, but she was definitely beast in that interview. With his interview with her, I kind of really thought it was interesting. And Romeo Lacoste did this as well in his interview that he did after the whole allegation situation, even though he admitted in the interview. With R. Kelly, though, he kind of tried to move the conversation from this has nothing to do with his work, like his music. Romeo Lacoste kind of did the same thing in his interview that he did after the whole accusations started to pop up, where during the interview he thanked the interviewer for liking his work and for saying that he's a great tattoo artist and he's the best and all this stuff. And that kind of speaks to the ego of a Capricorn. And this is where we're getting into shadow side sexuality, because there has to be a certain amount of power in there where you can be your own person socially, collectively. You have a presence, but in a different room, you're still holding that same presence because of your greatness, and you're using it to manipulate a situation to your benefit, and which is in many ways deals with Capricorn sexuality. And if you look at how Capricorns are in better sexual fantasies for Capricorn and stuff like that, and even the ways that people say that how Capricorns love, for example, and how Capricorns love bosses. Capricorn love to kind of get involved with someone who's a little bit, we tend to be either possessive of the person, or we like it when the person is possessive towards us. We tend to want a certain amount of control because we are, this is why they call us the Scorpios of the earth signs, because we are very much, we act on control, we move on control, whether it's self-control or not. And I'm not saying that every Capricorn is, you know, a, how do I describe this? That every Capricorn is a R. Kelly or something like that, because we're not. But when you look at, like if you ask a Capricorn what turns them on or stuff like that, or how they like envision or get off would be the right word, sexually, or how they like what really gets them sets in the mood, or whatever the case may be. A lot of it you'll see that has to do with something with control, whether it's an overuse or underuse of control. There's definitely a control theme when it comes to Capricorn sexuality. And it's really interesting because it can be very, I mean, I'm a Capricorn, so I can definitely speak on this. It can definitely be very intriguing, because I mean, obviously I'm a Capricorn, so I definitely understand the levels and why it's happening, especially with both of them. Like I really, when I first saw that R. Kelly was a Capricorn, I was like, first of all, for both of them, because they both ended up messing around with underage girls, there is the question of time, right? And that's something that we also rule. So we rule career, social status. We also rule time because of Saturn. So there is something about time. There is something about, with Capricorns, there can either be a neglect of time, or they can be an emphasis on time. And what I mean by that is that we are very much aware of how long it's going to take us to do something, what the goal is, whether it's like, is it a 5-year goal, is it a 10-year, like stuff like that. Like we have a time awareness like nobody else, because we can see kind of the amount of effort that we're gonna have to put into something. Our will power will get fuel in that thing. Now when it comes to other people and when it comes to sexually, it is something to say, it is something to kind of like really think about when you're talking about time sexually with a Capricorn. A lot of the time you'll see that Capricorns end up falling for people who are either older than them or have some sort of older kind of nature to them. So it is a time thing. And the reason why it is said that Capricorns kind of fall for people who are older than them is because we do tend to like a more mature, a more mature, just, you know, people. And the reason for that is because we, to keep it simple, we really like being with people that got their shit together. That's really attractive to us. It makes us feel like we can build something with you. If you have already built something for yourself, we can respect that. That's attractive to it. Like, that's actually an attribute that turns us on. It's like, oh damn, they're a boss, they gotta take, like, that aspect is like, whoa. That's like, wow, like, okay, so you don't even need me. Like, kind of, it's kind of like a like, I want it more, because it's like so like, wow, like, it doesn't even have don't know how to properly explain it, but it's almost like some people, like Virgo, take Virgo for example, they love to fall for people who don't have their shit together. Mind you, they're like the most together sign, right? So they love to fall for people that don't have their shit together, because they keep trying to heal them, and they rule healing, so it makes sense, right? But they end up being in toxic relationships because of it. So someone who doesn't have it together might actually be very attractive to a Virgo because they are the perfectionists at getting stuff together. So it's kind of like, for us, it's like, oh, you already have it together. That is even, we could be like a power couple. Like, it's a status thing. It's like, we literally could be like the best of the best. There is like a level. There's a let's just take this higher type of thing. Now, that is one of the things that I'm talking about as far as Capricorns usually tend to fall for people who are older than them. Now, for the Capricorns that tend to fall for people who are younger than them, this is when it gets a little bit tricky, because when it's in the legal realms, because society, I mean, that's another thing that we rule when it comes to, I mean, that's more Aquarius technically as far as society goes, but we do implement society in the traditional way, how we kind of go about things, you know, the rules of law. So when it comes to Capricorns, it's like, okay, there are rules. Capricorns are the best at boundaries. All the earth signs are pretty much amazing at boundaries. And I've said this to like almost every partner I've ever had. I'm like, just tell me what I can and cannot do, so I know what you know, what field I'm playing in, where can I not pass. Even though my Gemini moon will push the envelope, because you know Geminis don't give a fuck. But there is kind of like, I'm mentally aware of boundaries, and I actually like that they're there, because I can then see how I'm playing the game. It's almost like you're playing a game like Monopoly or something. You know how to do it, you know what you need to do, and then it becomes a goal, right? Okay, so for the Capricorns that pay attention to time and still know right from wrong, because there is a right from wrong there, right? Then there's kind of what is that word that I'm looking for? There's like this, there's an override. That's the word I was looking for. There's a kind of an override that happens when a Capricorn is doing something from the shadow side of who they are, of their ego, of control, where they can let part of what our collective energy is meant to be get kind of a little bit diluted, and one becomes more of an overwhelming factor than the other. So for Capricorns, especially in the sexual sense, one of the ways it manifests is this way, which would be ignoring society's set of boundaries as far as, you know, the law, as far as who you can, in regards to being a pedophile. And it just speaks on, and it's kind of, okay, so it, in regards to, being a pedophile, right? So the age limit between someone who is older, being with someone who is younger, whether it be 14 younger or up until they're legal, whatever the case may be. So there is an ignorance that happens there. There is kind of like, and I want it more, I want this goal more than I care about the consequences, the boundaries that were already set on a societal level, and the kind of influence of what I want sexually in the moment, or constantly, for a constant amount of time with multiple things. How far can I push this? How can I get away with this? Mind you, Romeo Lacoste, when I looked up his chart, he has a Gemini moon too. So it's like, I don't know him. I'm gonna be like Mariah Carey. I don't know him. But so there is like a level of kind of pushing the envelope, but there is also, and he also has a Capricorn stellium, which is interesting. But there is a level of like pushing the envelope, but wanting what you want. And in both R. Kelly's chart and Romeo Lacoste's chart, you can see how they were meant to influence people collectively. How they do have the energy of being famous to an extent. It's in their chart. So you can see kind of how they're meant to have a lot of different contacts with people. People are meant to look at them in a certain direction, a certain way. So there's kind of a lighthouse, a shining in many ways. But there is kind of an overuse of power, overuse of ego, and in the kind of the best way to explain it is in those moments in the interview where one, R. Kelly told you that this is not about the music, this is about having a relationship, blah, 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 but it's almost like ignore what I've done in my life. And then he also mentions, like, I gave you guys 30 years of my career. Now in that moment, I thought that was super interesting because he spoke about time, which is something that we rule, and it was almost like he finally looked at time. It was like throughout the whole entire thing, everybody's telling him like, hey, this is illegal, this is not right, there are younger, you've been doing this for years, whatever the case may be, especially with the case of Aaliyah and everything. So it's kind of like it's been like, hey, this is a time issue, like society's like blinking at a Capricorn like, hey, this is a time problem, you are mishandling your use of time, you are taking advantage of time. So and then finally, in the way he actually saw time was when it had to do with his career. And that's kind of an interesting kind of moment for me when I was watching the interview, because I was like, yes, a Capricorn is very self-aware when it comes to how they show up to the world, because we invest a lot of time in there. That's what we do. But it was interesting that he kind of didn't realize how much time he invested in the other stuff that he was doing, and this is when it becomes toxic sexually for a Capricorn, when they overuse or underuse time, when they ignore time, when they dismiss it because their will for control, our will, I can't say they because I am one, our will for control kind of undermines everything else that we want to do. Like if the goal is to have sex, does it have to be with someone over underage? Or you get what I'm trying to say? There is kind of a ignorance of time and what gets them off, whatever the case may be. There is like I'm gonna ignore time here. I don't want to notice it. I don't want to see it because this is what I want. So then it kind of gets into fetishing and what is it that about younger kids or younger girls that both of these guys have want, and why them? Why do they have to be so? Especially for a Capricorn, you would think they would know better, right? No, there is like a fetishing about it. There is like a capturing something fresh. It's like having a fish at a restaurant, fresh, caught out of the ocean. Is something fresh. There's something unique about it. There's something that's like almost, I don't want to use the word bougie, but right now, there's something kind of bougie about it. It's like something untouched that you're not supposed to have. It's like having caviar, in many ways. Like you're not supposed to have it. Or you can have caviar, but you know, it's really expensive, all of these other things. But there is kind of a having something that nobody else has type of thing. That comes from a Capricorn. We do tend to be highly bougie. We do tend to be very luxurious when it comes to things. But you would also know that a lot of millionaires also have all these different types of fetishes that they end up feeding into because they can put their money towards it. So there is kind of that using control, using power, using your status to influence something going your way. Now with the Romeo Lacoste interview, his interview was so stupid. Oh my god. I was just like, his ego was definitely like on the screen. Like you saw it. You saw his ego just presented there. It was just there. And the moment where he was just like, thank you for calling me. Like, thank you for calling me. Like, first of all, he picked up the phone and he started pretty much calling the guy an asshole because he reported on the damn story. And then he was just like, oh, thank you for calling me a great tattoo artist, and you know of my work, and you know I've tattooed so many celebrities, and all of these things are trophies that Capricorns have, because these are things that a Capricorn invested time in, right? All these people that are famous that he's tattooed are trophies behind him, that he wants you to remember when you're trying to accuse him of different things, right? So it's almost like a disconnect of the work that I've done, and just let's talk about, I guess, the problem that we're talking about, but don't forget, I'm still a boss. You know what I mean? That's kind of like the note to both the R. Kelly interview and the Romeo Lacoste interview. There is like a I'm still a boss bitch type of feel to them. There's a very egotistical, you know, I gave you 30 years of my career. I'm still, you know me as a great, you know, tattoo artist. I've tattooed so many people, Justin Bieber, Ariana Grande, all these things, right? So there is kind of like this kind of a moment where they're trying to make themselves feel like it's ridiculous for you to even see them this way because they're so great. And that goes into kind of reflecting how their ego is, how easily their ego gets wounded, how much power they have in the situation. Because if a Capricorn needs to remind you of the shit that they've done, there's obviously something not right, because usually you usually know, like especially if you know a Capricorn or something like that, you usually know that they're very hardworking. You see it, you're able to see it. We're not always out here like trying to glorify shit we do. Sometimes, yes, we wear it, whether, again, we can very bougie, very luxurious. We will like dress ourselves nice and be like very presentable and have a certain look to us and all of that. But it takes kind of a very ego moment for a Capricorn to be like, let me remind you of all the shit that I've done. 30 years of my fucking career I gave you. You know, there's like a weird moment, and you could see how it's almost like they're unwinding themselves, how they made this mistake, and karmically, because again, we also rule karma. This is Capricorn that we're talking about Saturn energy, how karmically they're having to pay for it, and how their whole reputation now is at a risk of being turned upside down because of this thing. That is the psychological aspect of what's going on in for these two guys right now. There's these two kind of transitions that is happening for them. It's like you potentially lost everything that you've built, which is like the worst thing that you could tell a Capricorn, because we're very hardworking. I don't need to tell you, you know, I don't need to tell you how much a Capricorn does. But I've said this from the beginning, and you guys know if you've been watching my videos for a long time, the one thing a Capricorn hates the most out of anything in this universe is when you goddamn waste your time. So if you tell us that everything we just did, we became great, we'd achieved success, we had the thing, and then that thing that we did before just came back and destroyed everything we just built, all of the recognition, everything, and now it's tainted us to this extent, that shit stings, because that means we wasted our time. Not only do we hate it when other people waste our time, it's the easiest way to piss us off, but when we have to admit that we just were the ones who did it to ourselves, that's like it's a gut-wrenching, ego bursting of the bubble type of moment for a Capricorn. So it's not easy, and so you can kind of see that in both interviews. There's just like this, like, oh my god, how, like, first of all, Romeo Lacoste was really trying to, he wasn't properly doing it, but he was really trying to talk his way kind of out of it poorly. I'm gonna give him a little bit of credit for he wasn't answering the questions, but he also wasn't defending himself properly. So it's like, it's kind of like that interview that R. Kelly did when he was like, define young girls or whatever. You just know they're both guilty because of how they're answering, because they're not being clear, because of how they're behaving, the words they're choosing, how they're trying to move the goalposts, trying to move your direction over here into the conversation, how they're trying to tell you about the work they've done, what was going on in their lives as far as like, oh, this is affecting my girlfriend, almost left me, all of this stuff. Like, you're like making themselves in many ways to be the victim because they've achieved so much greatness that they don't want to lose that. And having the perception of being anything other than that is just, it just really stings. So I say all of this because well, first of all, I think you guys should watch both interviews because I thought they were kind of really interesting to watch. They were very ridiculous. R. Kelly one definitely being very masculine, like toxic masculinity in there, because there was that moment when he burst. It's almost like he was trying to exert himself. That brought back the element of control from a Capricorn, and how we are very controlling. We can be very controlling. We can be fluid as well, but we do want things to move in a certain way. When we go into a room and we flip the light switch, we expect the light to go on. Okay, that's just how we are. And so there is an element of control, an element of wanting things to be a certain way, the way we expected, the way we built it to be. And when it's not working out that way, there is a frustration there. So when it comes to the sexuality of it, there is this kind of like knowing you did it wrong, knowing that, because both of them knew that they were doing this with younger girls. Both of them knew, especially Romeo Lacoste, because he straight up in the DMs asked the girl if she was she wants to wait till she's over 18 or she wants to do it now, like. And he done dated a girl that was 14 too, so it was just like for like 2 years or something, like 2-3 years, lived with her and everything. So it's just like you knew you had some knowledge, you know. And now you're paying the karma for it. It's like time's gone by and now society's looking at you different. Your social status is different. It has changed now. You are not looked at as the great anything. If anything, I'm sure that for Romeo Lacoste, the videos of people removing their tattoos from him should be a little bit like irritating. Like, oh, I can't believe that's happening. Like, I kind of wasted my time. He's taking it off, kind of thing. Is I'm sure it's a little bit irritating. I'm sure it's hurts the ego to an extent. I'm sure that like art, especially for R. Kelly, there isn't. I feel like for him, it's almost like he knows that some people will look at him the same way, but he's kind of almost hoping he could get by at this point. And he's gonna use a lot of his weaknesses to do so. That being like he being mentally incompetent to a level, to an extent. But you also have to understand that Capricorns are very manipulative. We know how to use we know how to use our tools, our resources to kind of control the situations that go our way. That includes dumb playing our weaknesses. Because one of the things that we don't like to be as well is we don't like to be known to be bad at something. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'll put it this way. We don't like to, we rule social status. Why would we want you to see us as anything other than great, you know? So if we're known into the public as being incompetent in some field, you do not think that a Capricorn would want to fix that? I'm pretty sure that, it's my opinion that R. Kelly knows more than he lets on, but he's going to play that card. That's going to be one of his tools of manipulation. Because at this rate, we're working from the shadow ego of him, of who he is. All of it is not, you know, Capricorn, but he is a Capricorn. So there is, to an extent, his ego. That's what it is. It is deep-rooted. There is definitely a lot of trauma there, but there's also an ignorance of that trauma. There is, especially because there's that moment in the interview when she asked how did the trauma of him getting sexually violated when he was younger, how has it affected him, and his first thing, he shook his head, it was like it didn't. It's kind of like those moments where you realized how deep it's buried, and how he does not want to accept that he turned into the same monster that did that to him. So there is this kind of poetic justice type of thing. I mean, Capricorns, karma, Saturn can be petty, and it's really sad, especially with the movement against R. Kelly and all of these things. It's just like, you could have just been known as great. I mean, you damn well created the first hip-hop opera ever, so it's just like you are known for certain things. Now you're going to be known mainly for this, and it's really sad, because what else can you do? How can you fix that? And then this is kind of when it goes into how do you fix it mode, and ultimately from here on, it's about getting by. Before, if you saw it before, like in the interview, he was like, oh, I beat my case, I shouldn't be getting, that's double jeopardy, you can't do that to me. Which is not, it's not how it works. There is kind of, for him, he really was trying to get the public to be on his side. The first time around, after everything, he still went on tour, he's still selling out tours and all that stuff, while during the trial was happening. Now it's different because it's getting taken away from him. Nope, nobody wants to see him except for his core fans who believe whatever he says. But everything got taken away from him in the public eye, and that's because our generation is not tolerating of the nonsense anymore. This is what I wanted to talk about, the dynamic of two generations of pedophiles, essentially, and how the impact has been. Even though Romeo Lacoste is it's not as popular as R. Kelly. Obviously, R. Kelly is way more popular in the mainstream. But when it comes to the YouTube community, and tattoo artists in the YouTube community, he is relatively well known. That was an ego boost, by the way. But when it comes to R. Kelly, there is kind of a level of, okay, can I move on from this? Is our generation going to accept that, especially after the Me Too movement, especially after addressing all the sexual tones that have been happening, especially after Jupiter moved into Scorpio and it's just been wrecking everybody left and right from it. It really brought in the lesson to our generation about sexuality, how we treat each other sexually, what is right and wrong, the boundaries we set, how far can you go? Can someone who is 45 to 50 years old, is it right for them to have a relationship with a 14-year-old all the way up until they're 18 or 19, 20, whatever? Is that okay? All of these kind of things, like, are these things okay? In Romeo Lacoste's level, it's like, should celebrities, well, to an extent, I wouldn't say every celebrity does this. I'm sure some celebrities have taken advantage of the power to be with their fans and, like, you know, get laid. I mean, every band story that came out of, like, I don't know, 80s, 90s was this, so I'm not really surprised about this, because that was kind of his excuse was, oh, I was new to social media and they took advantage of me. They took advantage of him by loving his work and being a fan. So because you appreciate someone, you should then get abused by them. So the logic is not necessarily there at all. But when it comes to Romeo Lacoste, it's like, he is part of our generation. So what is his punishment in the long run? Can he just come back in a month on YouTube, and can he just be fine and continue tattooing? Are people still going to want to get tattoos by him? Is his business going to fail? All of these things that I'm mentioning are very things that Capricorns care about, especially if you're in the position of being in that position. These are things that you care about, because this is about your longevity, and ultimately that's what a Capricorn cares about. Long-term plans, boundaries, how long is this going to go for? Is this my life? Etc., etc., etc. I'm sure, especially because they're both rich, even though R. Kelly is apparently very suffering financially, which is another one that's occurring. I'm sure because they're both wealthier than most, to an extent, that they'll find a different way to make money. Because making money is not necessarily hard for a Capricorn to do, but it might not be in the same way they've been doing it. And I say that because Romeo Lacoste, I don't know if people are going to be able to accept him publicly, but he could still make money hidden. There's so many millionaires that do this, that hide behind multi-million-dollar corporations and make a bunch of money from the people, and they don't know who's running what it is. But so it's not impossible for some white guy to totally do that. I mean, he also has white privilege, so there's levels to how he could still succeed in this generation. However, he might not be able to do it publicly to the same extent, because he pretty much admitted to doing this to girls. So there's that. So in regards to Capricorn sexuality, to recap, Capricorn sexuality, especially in the darker aspects, because there are lighter aspects to it, but I spoke about both sides a little bit, so you could kind of understand. And it has to definitely do with the boundaries. It has definitely to do with time awareness. It has to do with control, power, how we inflict it, what we want from it, how that turns us on or not. So there's kind of like this level where when you kind of let one be more controlling than the other, when the willpower for you is more of a force than any of those other things, when it's not in a balance, because all of these things have to be in balance for the Capricorn sexuality to really be kind of smooth, because we are also known to have a reputation in bed and all of these other things. But in regards to that, because that's not what I'm talking about, I'm talking about the shadow side of a Capricorn sexuality, to the kind of outliers of Capricorn sexuality that are these two people, which are R. Kelly and Romeo Lacoste, being that they can take it up to being sexual predators and letting their ego, when they have to account to the public, and really show face and really kind of address what they've done, how they address that, how they react to it, what they bring up, how that jeopardizes everything they've worked for. All of these things are very Capricorn-esque. I want to emphasize that I'm not talking about every goddamn Capricorn in this video. I found both stories to be very interesting, and I just thought it was interesting because Romeo Lacoste, again, he's part of our generation, so he is in many ways an example to kind of see of like, oh wow, look at what happened with that. Like, especially because of all of the sexual predators that have been coming out, a lot of them tend to be a lot older, so it's kind of like seeing someone from our generation having to go through this is really interesting, especially them being a Capricorn is very, very interesting as well. And with R. Kelly, him being like a super like celebrity, a bigger celebrity, and being known all over the world and being loved by fans all over the world, his music playing all over the world, all of these different things, which is where Romeo Lacoste is a little bit not as well known, but still known. There is still kind of way how we react to both characters, because R. Kelly, if I'm not mistaken, he's 50, so it's like, how do we react to pretty much essentially two people doing the same type of thing from different age groups, same ego, same kind of impact on society, same similar power structure happening, with how they affect us socially. So it's just a lot of different undertones that I thought was interesting, and I wanted to talk to you guys about. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of conversation. It was kind of like a run-on sentence, but I just thought it was interesting, and I hope it kind of helped you understand the outliers of like the outlier of, if you're looking at a chart of Capricorn sexuality, not all of us are not pedophiles, I'm not saying that, but there are different ways that it can manifest when you're working from a Capricorn who has a very toxic ego, who likes to be very controlling, manipulative, all of these things, and how those things can kind of manifest in the physical realm, because we're a physical sign, in one of the most toxic ways that it could probably manifest, for sure. So yeah, I hope you guys found this conversation really interesting. Let me know if you guys want to see more videos like this. There's a couple of other videos that I want to do that I'm probably going to post soon, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, I hope you guys found this interesting. As a Capricorn, I just found it very intriguing, especially R. Kelly shares my birthday, and I always kind of get curious when I see a news story about somebody doing something kind of like this, and I get curious to see like, oh, what sign are they? How, you know, because your sun sign is your ego, that's your willpower. So I was just like, okay. And then when I saw Romeo Lacoste was a Capricorn, I was like, of course, that's why he was out here like boosting. I was like, he either has to have some sort of Leo placements that's being like, thank you for saying that I'm such a great tattoo artist. I've tattooed so many celebrities, all these things. Like, all of these things he was, I was like, there's somebody, the ego here that's toxic. There's something about it. I can see through it. And then I felt, and I'm like, oh, Capricorn, coño. So I was just like, stop giving us a bad name, coño. Okay, anyway. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and stuff. Like, I would love to start a conversation of how you guys think, you know, think about these things. Let me know if you guys wanted me to do like an astrology kind of breakdown of both of their charts. That would be kind of interesting, because I was looking at both of them. They have some similar-ish kind of things going on, but I just thought, you know, it would probably be interesting to talk about. Anyway, I will see you guys in the next video.